How's everybody today? Still a pretty day out there. It's still warm, my kind of weather. But anyway, winter's coming sometime. Anyway, we had a good day yesterday. Had all the folks over to the house, including Nancy, and had a breakfast, and they all went to the pumpkin patch. Betty calls it the pumpkin patch breakfast. And we do that once a year, obviously. And but it was a good day, and grand young'uns were there and all that, and so we had a good time, and they did too, I hope. But it was good. Enjoy it. Would you bow with me, please? Father, we thank you for this day and for this opportunity that we have to gather together and study your word and worship you. Father, help us clear our minds of the things that go on in our everyday walk of life that frustrate us and try our patience and all those things. Help us clear our mind of all of that and enjoy worshiping you. And Father, I hope you are pleased with our worship and our study. Father, we'd ask you to be with those that aren't with us this morning that are ill, that they might be restored to their normal walk of life and back with us shortly. Father, we thank you for all the things you do for us. We thank you for the blessings in this physical life, and we thank you also for the things you've done for us spiritually. We thank you that you planned for how man would come live with you before you even spoke the world into existence. Father, we thank you that Jesus came and did your will and took our sin to Calvary's tree. Help us to be appreciative of that and give you praise, honor, and glory for it. God, guard, and keep us for you, and it's in Christ's name we pray. Amen. We're still looking at the book of Exodus. We're going to look at the plagues this morning. In chapter 4, Moses keeps giving excuses to God, saying, that's not me. I don't know. Why me? Why me? And quite honestly, God had put him, I guess, where he needed him to be. He could have just as easily been dead as a baby, okay? Because in that short time frame between the birth of Aaron, his brother, and his birth, Pharaoh has been convinced that the children of Israel are growing so fast that if an enemy attacks, they'll join the enemy and we'll be defeated, and they'll take over Egypt. And so I guess they were growing real fast. But anyway, he decides that all the babies that are born, male, are to be killed by the midwife. And Moses' mother puts him in a tar basket and puts him in the Nile River, and Pharaoh's daughter comes down and sees him and has compassion on him and even hires his mother to be the maid for him, right? Somebody's hand's in that, right? Yeah. And he grows up in Pharaoh's house till the age of 40. What were you doing when you were 40? I guess when Betty and I were 40, we got assigned to Memphis, Tennessee, to the depot up there. And at that time, that was the highest murder and robbery capital of the South. Anyway, that's what we were doing at 40. He was in Pharaoh's house, and he goes down and looks at what the children of Israel are doing, because obviously his mother's told him who he is. And it's given him some guidance in life, because he sees an Egyptian giving a Israelite a hard time. In fact, abusing him. And he kills the Egyptian. So somebody told him about right and wrong. And then he sees two Israelites fighting, and they said, "You're going to kill us like you did the Egyptians?" So he flees and goes to Midian, stays there 40 years, right? And the Bible talks about his father-in-law being Reuel, and also Jethro, and there's about 7 different names that's used for Moses' father-in-law. But he's a priest in Midian. And you say, what? It's just like when Abraham meets, after the defeat of the kings, he meets Melchizedek, who is the king of Salem and the priest of the Most High God. And that's all we know about Melchizedek, isn't it? We don't know when he was born, don't know when he was made king, don't know when he was made a priest of the Most High God. Jethro, or Reuel, is a priest. And priest of God has to be, because when he comes to visit Moses, he in the wilderness again at Mount Sinai, he gives him some pretty good advice and guidance, and builds an altar and sacrifices to God. Why me? Why me? And God, to prove in chapter 4 that he's the guy and that God is going to be behind him and he's going to be with him and keep him and bless him, he says, what's that in your hand? He says, it's a rod. It's a shepherd's rod. And he says, cast it on the ground. He cast it on the ground, turned into a snake. It scared Moses, scared me. I just don't like snakes. I don't like dead ones either. You know, both kinds are bad, live ones and dead ones. God says, grab it by the tail, and he grabbed it by the tail, and it turned back into his rod. Hello? You know, you walking around with a rod, when's it going to turn into a snake? Again. Have a little doubt in your mind, wouldn't you? He said, put your hand in your vest. And he put his hand inside his outer garment. He said, now take it out. Took it out, and it's leprosy. And everybody in that, you ever seen a leper? Ever seen one? It's bad. The flesh rots off of the bone. You can't stop it. The only leprechaun now, there used to be 2 in the United States, one in Hawaii and one in Louisiana. There were several in Vietnam, and we visited one of them. Yes, sir. Is it still there? Okay. Okay. I knew it was there when I was on active duty, but and they had several in Vietnam, and we visited and took clothes and stuff to them. And anyway, it's a sad, sad sight. And he said, now put your hand back in. He did. Take it out. And he pulls it out, and it's good again. There's your proof, Moses. I'm going to be with you. You're going to quit doubting. Quit doubting. He selected him for a great purpose, because before the world was spoken into existence by God, he has a plan for you and I in our time. And that he's going to send his son. And he's going to bring him through Israel. He's going to bring him through Jacob. He's going to bring him through Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, their descendants. And he's going to take care of that nation that he's going to build in Egypt. And he's got it almost where he wants it, doesn't he? Now it's time for him to leave, and he knows Pharaoh's not going to let him go, because they are slaves now. Even there's nobody left that remembers Joseph. There's nobody left that remembers what he did and what trust Pharaoh had put in Joseph and what his management skills were. Well, he had some good help. God told him how to manage for Egypt and for Israel. Anyway, when we get to chapter 7, it starts. It starts. And when Aaron and Moses first confront Pharaoh about letting the children of Israel go and so that they could worship their God and do sacrifice to him and all of that, For proof to Pharaoh, Aaron cast his rod on the ground and it turned into a serpent. Well, guess what? The Egyptian magicians do the same thing. They cast theirs on the ground and theirs turn into snakes too. But what happens to their snakes? Yeah. Moses and Aaron's rod eats their snakes. And it doesn't say what happens after that, so maybe the rod doesn't grow. It doesn't say anything about, well, what? You ever wonder about that? Maybe I'm crazy. You know, what happened? All those snakes got eaten. Now you walking around with a dozen snakes in your rod? I don't know, you know. Yeah, looked like it'd be bigger. Anyway, I guess I'm crazy for reading stuff into things. But anyway, you know, what happened? Their thing does it. Their rod turns into snakes too. And so that's not really a bunch of proof to Pharaoh, is it, that these men are from God? From God. But that's not the first plague. Moses tells them that we're going to hold our rod out over the river and it's going to turn to blood. Okay? And you keep reading a little further in this first plague, the plague of blood. Every stream, every river, every pond, every lake, and even pots of wood and pots of stone, the water in them turns to blood. Okay? All the fish die. Okay? No fish left. Now, if you're a fisherman, that's your livelihood. And the fish in the Nile River and all the streams and tributaries of it have no fish in them. No ponds have fish in them. Lasts for 7 days. No fresh water. They got to go out and dig for fresh water. That ought to be just about enough proof, shouldn't it? It ought to be enough proof that these are from a super. But guess what? The magicians can turn water into blood. I'm sure the Lord had a hand in that because he's going to harden Pharaoh's heart. Can you imagine that, though, if you go down the Tennessee River and it's blood? All the fish are floating. I was just talking to my neighbor across the street. He didn't tell me exactly, and he probably would never tell me exactly where he was fishing. But he hung one, and he said it had to weigh 7 to 9 pounds the other night. And he said the guy that was fishing with him, and they're members of this fishing club here, missed him the first time with the net, and he got him back near the boat, and he missed him the second time and said, that fish gone. Can you imagine, can you imagine all the fish? Yes, sir. Hello. Hello. That ought to be enough. Ought to be enough. Certainly ought to be enough for the children of Israel that, boy, we've got some people and God's on their side and they're going to do things for us. Okay? Their memory's not very long, however, is it? Less than 3 months. They're going to be fussing. You brought us out here and there ain't no water. Hello? Anyway, what would you do if you were Pharaoh? Roger says he'd let them go. I think I would too. Can it get worse? Can it get worse? Evidently, after the 7 days, the water clears up and all that, and God can put fish anywhere he wants to, can't he? So maybe he put fish back in real quick. And maybe some of my summations aren't good. But anyway, in 7 days, the water clears up. And so he's all right again. I wonder about that in the pots. I guess the ones in the stone pots and the wooden pots, it turns back to good water too. But if you were a fisherman, you were glad to see that. And then it says that the rivers stink. And that does. Dead fish do stink. Have you ever been in another country where if you go to the marketplace, they don't have refrigeration, and the fish are out there, and whatever, they leave the heads on and feed on chicken so you know it's a chicken, and if it's pork out there, they leave the hog's head out there so you know you're buying pork. That was going on in Asia. When did we get refrigeration? Right around 1900. Late 1800, early 1900, we were getting refrigeration in some places. They'd go out and cut the ice on Lake Erie and put it in insulated warehouses so they'd have some ice in the summertime. That stuff got expensive in July, I guess. Hello? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But, yeah. But we're talking about 1450 BC, years before Christ. We're talking about 3,400 years ago. And so in Vietnam, if you went downtown to the marketplace, the fish are out there, and they're not going to be there tomorrow, not the same ones, hopefully. Same in the Ukraine, same in Russia. You went over there, the preservation of fish. When we were talking about 5 fish, right? Feed 5,000 people. It wasn't fresh pond-raised catfish, okay? It was dried fish. They lay it out on screen wire. And the Vietnamese catch the drippings. And what do you do with the drippings? You put it on your rice. Hello? Huh? You don't want rice for a long time after that. Betty will tell you how when I started eating rice again, it took me about 30 years to get over their rice. Same thing with these guys. When we were standing at the bus stop in the Ukraine or in Russia, there's a guy trying to sell you dried fish. Dried fish. And that's what the Lord was feeding those people, dried fish. He wasn't feeding those people fresh catfish. Okay? But can you imagine no fish in the river, no fish in the streams, none in the ponds? That'd be enough to go talk to Pharaoh, wouldn't it, if you were a citizen? Well, I know now, folks marching on D.C., fussing. Hello, no fish, no fish. And so it lasted for 7 days. Chapter 8, the next plague. And this one's my favorite. I have to admit, I like it, the frogs. Anybody in here know a guy named Roy Jackson? Out on there's a road that went to Jackson Forward and out to Cypress, Forks of Cypress. Anyway, he and his father and Jim Mills farmed together when I was growing up, and Roy and I used to frog hunt. And I liked frog legs for breakfast. And Mother would cook the frog legs. We'd go frog gigging at night and get some frogs, and they'd come back and we'd have frog legs for breakfast. These folks wasn't ready for frog legs, or that many of them anyway. I can't imagine. But it says, so talking about the frog legs, it says in verses 1 through 7, it says, the Lord said unto Moses, see, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet, and thou shalt speak all that I command thee, and Aaron thy brother shall speak unto Pharaoh, that he send the children of Israel out of his land. And I will harden his heart, and multiply my signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt, but Pharaoh shall not hearken unto thee, that I may lay my hand upon Egypt and bring forth mine armies and my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great judgments. And the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I stretch forth my hand upon Egypt and bring out the children of Israel from among them. Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded them. And then go to chapter 8 about the frogs. That was about the blood. And the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, and it shall go up and come into thine house, and into thy bedchamber, on thy bed, and into the house of thy servants, and upon thy people, and under thy ovens, and under thy kneading troughs. And the frogs shall come up both on thee, and upon thy people, and upon all thy servants. And the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. Notice as the magicians did the same thing. They could produce some frogs. There's frogs everywhere. Think about if you were in the kitchen getting ready for the evening meal. Huh? You can't keep them out of the cornbread mix. Huh? Hello? Huh? You want frogs in your cornbread? I don't. I'm not this real. Sometimes I like cracklings on my cornbread, but that's once in a while. That's not every night. Anyway, can you imagine what the wives are doing to the men? Hello? They're in the bed, the frogs. Hello? Yeah. Everywhere you turn, you open the cabinet, and frogs. Huh? Wow. Yeah. Betty has a tale about when we lived at Fort Rucker. We built our retirement home. And she and another lady were getting ready for some kind of shindig we was going to have at the house. And there was this lizard came in there, and he was one of them with the red head and belly. And Betty's up on the table, and that woman's got the broom, and they're fighting. Yeah. Think about frogs everywhere. I mean, every place you go to put your pants on, in the pockets. Huh? Yeah, right. Hello? Yeah. And in the bed, in the ovens. Huh? Yeah. And their ovens weren't like our ovens, okay? Their ovens are made out of brick. If you go to a pizza place that talks about oven-cooked pizza, my son and daughter-in-law and grandsons in Helena, Montana, that's the only kind of pizza they want. And obviously, they leave them in the oven too long at that place to suit me. Yes, sir. Yeah. They're trying to prove to Pharaoh these guys are fake, is what they're trying to say. Yeah. But, frogs. Frogs everywhere. Well, they lost a little bit up here, missing some of their Happy Meal, And you're right, they ought to have been trying to get rid of them. But anyway, the frogs then start dying. And then when Pharaoh calls them and says, petition God and have him get rid of the frogs. Moses says, when you want that done? He said, tomorrow. And so there's my sermon, right? And I've preached it 2 or 3 different times at different places. One more night with frogs. You can take that and run how far you want to chase that rabbit. But anyway, that's Pharaoh. He can take one more night with the missus fussing about the frogs in the bed. Hello? Yeah, right. get rid of them now. And God could have got rid of them now. He killed every one of them just like that. He could have even made them disappear, but he didn't. It says they piled them up in piles and they stunk. Now, we got dead fish stinking. We got frogs stinking. Huh? How much worse is it going to get? How much worse? How much longer is Pharaoh going to put up with this before he does what God wants him to do? This is the last one, though. The snakes, the blood, and the frogs are the last things the magicians can do. No other of the plagues can they do. They can't do anymore. And then it gets to be, if frogs are aggravating, the next one is even more so, I think. Lice. In chapter 8 and verse 17, it says, they did so, and Aaron stretched forth his hand and with his rod, smote the dust of the earth, and it became lice in man and in beast. All the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Egypt, not just in Cairo, not just in Ramsey, not just in where Pharaoh was. All the dust became lice. Every little speck of dust became a lice. And where were they? They're everywhere. Huh? That's another thing you don't want in the bed, or in your clothes, or in your hair, or anywhere on you is lice. But it says everything had it. Man and beast. Everywhere in the country. It's a pretty good sized place. Pretty good sized place. And they had no paved roads in those days. All the roads were dirt. Dust everywhere. Yes, sir. Well, gnats are lice. Which one? Yeah. Well, either one. Either one. When we were in Germany, there'd be gnats in this big old, it looked like a cloud, and you'd go the other way, obviously. But, it'd be big as this room, a bunch of gnats together. And I don't know what you call them. You don't call them a herd or a flock or what. Anyway, a room full of all nothing but gnats. And they got them everywhere now. A swarm, okay. The bees or gnats or, yeah, okay. That'd be good. But if it's lice, they'll drive you crazy, absolutely nuts, right? If it's gnats, you can't get away from them because he says they're everywhere. All the dust in the land of Egypt became whatever this was. It was lice or gnats. Notice that this time the magicians can't duplicate. They can't get rid of them either. So they can't do that plague. You know what the magician said in verse 19? They said, this is the finger of God. Whether it's a finger or a hand, God has done that. He has changed all the dust in the whole land to lice, and it is tormenting the people. Obviously, tormenting the animals. Wow. All you can see is a cat over there doing this, right? Dog doing the same thing. Getting rid of them. People doing the same thing. Now, I don't know whether they had anything that kill lice or not. Yes, sir. Probably didn't. and I don't know how, well, they were, as compared to us, rather primitive, okay? They did build some buildings and some pretty good architecture in their time frame. But some of the stuff, we were still bleeding people with a fever when George Washington was the president of the United States. So what do they know about getting rid of lice or gnats or whatever? Just going to have to live with it till it's gone. Then the next one, after the plague of lice, we've got the plague of flies. Verse 21 says, if thou wilt not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies upon thee and upon thy servants, upon thy people, into thy house. And the houses of the Egyptians shall be full of swarms of flies, and also the ground whereon they are. And I will sever in that day the land of Goshen in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there, to the end thou may knowest that I am the Lord in the midst of the earth. Wow. Pharaoh ought to have the picture. Flies. I had one yesterday. I was just out sitting down in a chair outside, and he wouldn't leave me alone. I didn't have a swatter. Finally, I went in the house. And that's just one fly. We're talking about swarms of them things. Everywhere. House full of flies. Aggravates you to tears. And more than that, maybe. Anyway. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I hear you. Yeah. Flies everywhere. Isn't it amazing? You can walk outside and stand there for a few minutes and there not be anything. You go in the house, get a sandwich, come back out with your sandwich, and here they come. How do they know that? How in the world do they know I went in and got a sandwich? Yeah. They just, And so here they are with swarms of them everywhere in the house. But where weren't they? In the land of Goshen. Who's in the land of Goshen? Israelites. No flies there that they didn't want, evidently. That's another lesson, Is that enough? I mean, he's had the lice, the blood, the frogs, now the flies. Is that enough? It ought to be. It ought to be. It's just like when we talked about I am. When Christ asked those who came to the garden, who do you seek? And they said, we seek Jesus of Nazareth. He says, I am. Boom. They fell on the ground. I mean, the power of the statement makes them fall down. That wasn't enough. Peter takes out the sword, cuts off Malchus's ear. He's guard for the high priest. What does Christ do? He picks that ear up and it reattaches it to Malchus. And that wasn't enough. People are stupid sometimes, aren't they? That wasn't enough. And Pharaoh, this ain't enough. It's not enough. Flies everywhere. Flies everywhere. Pharaoh agrees to let the people go and then changes his mind. Doesn't let them go. Then there's a plague on the cattle. It's in chapter 9, plague on the cattle. And it's a sickness of some kind, and all the cattle, and we're talking about all the cattle. There was sheep and cows and everything. And they all died. There's horses and donkeys and camels and oxen and sheep all died. All the Egyptians' cattle died. The land in Goshen, cattle don't die. So now we've got all the fish are gone. The frogs are stinking. The fish are stinking. And the lice have been and the flies have been, and now the cattle die. What's enough? What's enough? And not enough. And then we talk about the bowls. Verse 8, and the Lord said unto Moses and unto Aaron, take to you handfuls of ashes of the furnace, and let Moses sprinkle it toward the heaven in the sight of Pharaoh. It shall become a small dust in all the land of Egypt, and shall be a boil breaking forth with blands unto man upon beasts throughout all the land of Egypt. You ever had a boil? Huh? Yeah. I had one right here on my jaw. I guess I was 16, 17. Hurt. I went swimming down Waterloo and the thing broke open. I was thankful for that. It disappeared after that. But what about Job? Job had the same problem, didn't he? Job was covered in them. Now he'd take a broken piece of pottery and scrape it himself. Here's Egypt with boils on everything, man and beast. And I'm assuming, and maybe my assumption is wrong, I'm assuming that every one of these things affect Pharaoh in some manner. And I would assume that these boils affected Pharaoh. I would assume he had some. And how much is enough? I mean, that's the question, isn't it? Over and over. There's a lesson in there for us, isn't it? How many times you have to hear the word before it's enough? It causes you to react. How many times did I have to hear it when I was growing up for me to react in the manner that God had asked for me to react? How many people do you know that have put it off and put it off and put it off? I agree. The message of the New Testament is simply, and this was of the workers, some hired in the morning early, and they were paid so much. Some were hired at noon, and they were paid the same amount. Some were hired in the middle of the afternoon, they were paid the same amount. Some were hired at the very last hour and paid the same amount. What's that parable about? It's about the message of God and when it's obeyed, if I understand it correctly. And it says, whenever you accept and whenever you make up your mind, God is willing to forgive. And the offer is still there. And so this, how much is enough, is over and over and over again. Yes, sir. Yeah. That was my assumption, that he had them too. And he's trying to get rid of them too. No. A bunch of them, body covered, cattle covered. Painful, terrible painful. Mm-hmm. And the magicians can't do this, and they can't get rid of the bowls either, Can't do it. Next plague is still in chapter 9, starting 13. Plague of hail. Plague of hail. Verse 16, I think, is the key to all of it, every bit of it. He says in every deed, or in very deed for this cause have I raised thee up, for to show in thee my power, that my name may be declared throughout all the earth. That's God's message to Pharaoh. He says, I've raised you up to be Pharaoh. so that I can prove who I am to all of the world, and they'll understand I am God. I am the Lord. I am. Because that's the reason you're Pharaoh. Can you imagine what that does to Pharaoh? The God I've been fighting all along, all through this episode, and the God of the people that I have put in slavery, and I've been made Pharaoh by him so that he can prove how powerful he is. Yes, he's powerful. Obviously, he spoke the world into existence. He didn't take anything and make it. He spoke it into existence. From nothing came something. And Pharaoh's going to understand that sooner or later. He raised him up so he could drown him in the Red Sea because he violated and went against God on every occasion that he had the opportunity to do so. And so he says, I've done that. Hail. Hail beat down everything that was fixing to be a crop. It even stripped the trees of leaves. Hail. 1976, when we came back from Germany and reported Leavenworth, Kansas, there'd been a hailstorm there, and there wasn't a car in any car lot in the city of Leavenworth that didn't have hail damage. And they wasn't knocking off at $500. And I said, hello, you can keep your hail damage machine. But, hail can do lots of damage, and it can ruin a crop in a heartbeat, can't it? One afternoon can ruin the crops. And it was all throughout the whole land. But no hail in Goshen. None where the Israelites were. It's all contained in the rest of Egypt. Next one, chapter 10. The 8th plague is locusts. You ever been where there was a bunch of locusts? We went to Mineral Wells, Texas, to Fort Walters to the first phase of flight school in 1965 in July. In the middle of August, we were driving down to go to church in Mineral Wells from Fort Walters. And you couldn't even see the street lights for the locusts. And I put on the brakes and slid right through the intersection. The street was greasy with them suckers. Where are you going? I'd never been around that many. I thought at first it was black grasshoppers or black crickets, but it wasn't. It's locusts. Locusts everywhere. And what the hail didn't damage, the locusts ate. So at the end of this, what's left in Egypt? Cattle are dead. Fish are dead. They've had lice and flies that are just aggravators. But now they've had the hail damage the crops, and here come the locusts to eat what was left. Nothing. Egypt is destroyed. And that's what the people told Pharaoh. Egypt is destroyed. How much is enough? One more plague. Yes, sir.
I wonder how long after
Yeah. Egypt turns into a real problem during right after Solomon. Okay, if you remember, they aligned themselves with Egypt against Assyria, and so Egypt becomes a power pretty shortly, But what time frame are we talking about? We're talking about 800s. So we're talking 600 years. They're a major player on the street in the area of Israel and the Eastern Mediterranean. Wow. The next plague is the one that is going to be the breaker. And we don't have time to talk about it. We'll talk about that last one in Passover next week and try to tie Passover with communion. and the church and this time frame. Any questions? That's all. I was going to do Passover, but I didn't.